I'm told that the evidence includes hairs found in Guthrie's home. And that's an interesting part of this because we haven't known in the past that some of the evidence that they are testing for DNA has been hairs.
It is not a fingerprint. It is not a confession. It is not a weapon or a witness or a vehicle. It is a hair, found inside Nancy Guthrie's home in the Catalina foothills outside Tucson, Arizona. Recovered by investigators at some point during the first 75 days of the most high-profile abduction case in the country. And on April 16, 2026, Brian Entin, News Nation's senior national correspondent, the journalist who has covered this case longer and harder than anyone, confirmed that the hair has been sent to the FBI's laboratory for advanced analysis. Not the Florida lab. Not the private facility the Pima County Sheriff's Department has used from the beginning. The FBI. That distinction matters. And it matters for a reason most people will not understand until you hear what CeCe Moore, the foremost genetic genealogist in the United States, said about it. Moore called this the first positive forensic development she has heard in weeks. The Pima County Sheriff's Department issued a statement in response. This is not new information. The private lab we utilize in Florida continues to share information with the FBI lab and other partner labs across the country. DNA analysis remains ongoing. That statement is technically accurate. It is also carefully designed to say nothing, because the real question is not whether the FBI is involved. The real question is why a hair that was already at a Florida lab needed to leave that lab and travel to the FBI. What could the Florida lab not do with it? And what can the FBI do that no one else can? The answer to that question may be the single most important forensic development in this case since the doorbell camera footage was released on February 10th. This channel breaks down what no one else will: the forensics, the silence, and the details investigators are not connecting for you. Subscribe now and drop your theory below. Because this one hair could end 75 days of nothing. To understand why, you need to understand the woman whose home it was found in. Nancy Ellen Long was born on January 27, 1942, in Fort Wright, Kentucky. She moved to the Tucson area in the early 1970s with her family. She married Charles Guthrie. They raised 3 children together: Savannah, Annie, and Cameron. When Charles died at age 49 during a mining exploration trip in Mexico in 1988, Nancy did not leave. She did not sell the house. She did not move closer to family elsewhere. She stayed 5 decades in the same home, the same neighborhood, the same church attended with such consistency that when she did not appear for the February 1st Sunday morning live stream, her church friends did not wait. They called the family immediately. That is who Nancy Guthrie was. Not a headline, not a case number. A woman whose life ran on a rhythm so steady that the first disruption in years triggered an alarm within hours. By 2026, Nancy was 84 years old. She had limited mobility. She relied on daily cardiac medication. A Bluetooth-enabled pacemaker tracked her heart and linked to her Apple Watch. She had no cognitive impairment. She was sharp. She was present. She was rooted in a routine that had not shifted in decades. Her daughter, Annie, and son-in-law, Tommaso Scioni, lived nearby. They were the reason Nancy could stay in the home she loved. They were there every day. Savannah Guthrie said it herself in her first public interview after the disappearance. They made it possible for her to stay in the house that we grew up in, that she loved so much. That house was not just a structure. It was the fixed point of an entire family's geography. Nancy's children arranged their lives around it. Her grandchildren knew it as Grandma's house, the one that had always been there, the one that would always be there. Nancy Guthrie lived a life designed around predictability. That predictability kept her safe for 50 years. It also made her targetable by anyone who studied it long enough. And somewhere inside that house, on a floor, a countertop, a piece of furniture, a surface no one thought to look at twice, a hair was left behind. Not by Nancy, not by her family, not by anyone whose presence in that home could be explained. If that hair belongs to the person who took her, it represents something no other piece of evidence in this case has offered. A clean, single-source biological sample that does not tangle with other profiles, does not require months of deconvolution, and does not depend on a database that has already returned nothing. It is the smallest piece of evidence in the room. It may be the only one that matters. Here is the evening that preceded the disappearance. January 31st, 2026. A Saturday. Nancy takes an Uber to her daughter Annie's house for dinner. A family meal. Time with her grandson, Olmo. The kind of evening that does not make the news because nothing about it is unusual. Afterward, Tommaso Cioni drives Nancy home in the family's blue Honda CR-V. 10 minutes from Annie's house to the Catalina foothills. He drops her off at approximately 9:50 p.m., walks her inside, confirms she is safe. He leaves. That is the last time anyone who loved Nancy Guthrie saw her alive. For the next 3 hours and 57 minutes, there is no verified record of any activity at the residence. No camera trigger, no alarm activation, no phone call, no digital trace of any kind. Silence. Then, 1:47 a.m., February 1st. The doorbell camera disconnects. At 2:28 a.m., Nancy's pacemaker app disconnects from her Apple Watch. 2 independent systems going dark in the same window. That is not a malfunction. That is a sequence. Look at what the FBI recovered from the doorbell camera before the feed died. A man approaches the front door, masked, gloved, a black mustache visible beneath the face covering. On his back, a 25-liter Ozark trail hiker pack, a budget backpack sold at Walmart. On his body, a gun placed improperly in a holster positioned over his crotch. In his mouth, a flashlight clenched between his teeth so both hands remain free. He reaches the door. He taps the camera with light, deliberate taps, trying to knock it loose. It holds. He reaches for a nearby potted plant and pulls foliage over the lens. The feed goes dark. He does not scan the property. He does not circle the house. He does not test windows. He walks in a straight line from the street to the door, direct, purposeful, rehearsed. Now, hold this against the hair evidence. Investigators believe the suspect was inside Nancy Guthrie's home for 40 to 42 minutes. 42 minutes of movement. 42 minutes of contact with surfaces, air, and enclosed space. 42 minutes of breathing, turning, reaching, stepping. Stand inside that house at 2 a.m. The camera is dead. The pacemaker has disconnected. A man has been here for over 30 minutes. He is moving through rooms. He is touching surfaces. And somewhere, on a countertop, a tile floor, the arm of a chair, the edge of a door frame, a single hair has fallen from his head. He does not notice. He will never know it happened. But the FBI knows now. The mixed DNA found on doorknobs and bedsheets tangled with other profiles, family members, visitors, workers, and became forensically unusable. But a hair on a floor does not mix. It does not tangle. It belongs to one person. 42 minutes inside an enclosed space is not a visit. It is an occupation, and no one occupies a room for that long without leaving something behind. The question is whether the something they left behind is the one thing that identifies them. That answer is now sitting in an FBI laboratory. To understand why one hair matters this much, you need to understand how many times the forensics in this case have failed. Start with the mixed DNA. Investigators recovered biological material from inside Nancy Guthrie's home. Surfaces, objects, points of contact throughout the residence. That material was sent to DNA Labs International, a private forensic laboratory in Florida used by the Pima County Sheriff's Department. The results came back mixed. Genetic material from more than one individual tangled together in the same samples. Family members, friends, landscapers, pool workers, the kind of genetic material you would expect to find in a home occupied by the same woman for over 50 years. Sheriff Chris Nanos told NBC News the deconvolution process, separating those profiles into individual identities, could take weeks, months, possibly a year. The lab reported challenges. The technology to separate complex mixtures at the resolution required for identification is still being developed. CeCe Moore confirmed that companies are racing to release new deconvolution software, and that the Guthrie case is likely the reason that timeline has been accelerated. But acceleration is not arrival. The mixed DNA remains unresolved. Next, CODIS, the FBI's Combined DNA Index System, a national database holding more than 19 million offender profiles. Every sample submitted from the Guthrie investigation returned 0 matches. No hits, no partial matches, no familial leads. The suspect, whoever left biological material inside that house, has never been arrested for a qualifying offense, has never had a sample collected, has never entered the system. The database cannot find what it was never given. Then the glove, found in a field roughly 2 miles from Nancy's home. Black, visually consistent with the gloves worn by the masked figure in the doorbell footage. For a brief window, it looked like a break. DNA was extracted. It came back to a local restaurant worker. No criminal record, no connection to Nancy Guthrie, no connection to anyone in her orbit. The glove was not evidence. It was a coincidence wearing the right costume. Fourth, the bite flashlight. Moore raised this weeks ago. The suspect had a flashlight clenched between his teeth in the doorbell footage. Saliva is one of the most reliable sources of single contributor DNA. If the flashlight made contact with any surface inside the home, a countertop, a floor, a door frame, trace saliva could still be recoverable. Moore urged investigators to return to the house and conduct additional swabbing. It is unclear whether they did. The house was returned to the family before all evidence collection was confirmed complete. Former SWAT commander Bob Craigier acknowledged as much to Parade. They gave the original scene back too soon. 4 forensic threads. 4 walls. The mixed DNA cannot be separated. CODIS has nothing. The glove was a dead end. The bite flashlight evidence may have been compromised or never collected. Now, place the hair against that landscape. A hair shaft does not produce a mixed sample. It does not tangle with other profiles the way touch DNA on a shared surface does. It belongs to one person. The exterior contamination, skin oils, environmental residue, can be cleaned away. The DNA inside the shaft, if it can be extracted, produces a single-source profile. No deconvolution, no CODIS dependency, no mixing. Every piece of evidence in this case has led to a wall. The hair does not lead to a wall, it leads around it. That is the difference between frustration and progress. And the reason it can lead around it is a technology that 5 years ago did not exist. Brian Entin asked CeCe Moore the question that matters most. Why would the hair leave the Florida lab and go to the FBI? Moore's answer was precise, and it narrows the possibilities to one. If the hair had a root, the follicle still attached, the Florida lab would have already extracted a standard DNA profile from it. A rooted hair is one of the cleanest biological samples in forensics. Single source. No mixing. The lab could have run it through CODIS immediately. They could have begun genetic genealogy without waiting for new technology or additional processing. If the hair had a root, Moore said, the case might already be solved. It does not have a root. That is the only explanation that fits the chain of custody. The Florida lab received the evidence. The Florida lab could not extract what was needed. The evidence was forwarded to the FBI, and the FBI works regularly with one company that specializes in exactly this problem, Astrea Forensics, founded by Dr. Ed Green, a molecular biologist at UC Santa Cruz. Green developed and refined a technology that the field had been told was impossible, extracting SNP profiles from rootless hair shafts, single nucleotide polymorphisms, the same genetic markers used in investigative genetic genealogy, the same markers that build family trees through commercial databases like 23, and Me, Ancestry, and GED Match. For decades, a rootless hair was considered forensically useless for identification. You could pull mitochondrial DNA from it, enough to exclude someone, but not enough to identify them with certainty. Thousands of people share identical mitochondrial profiles. It was a tool for ruling out, not ruling in. Green changed that. His technology extracts nuclear DNA, SNP markers, from the hair shaft itself. No root required. The FBI has used Astrea's work in active investigations. It was deployed in the Gilgo Beach murder case. Rootless hairs helped investigators build the profile that led them to Rex Heuermann. A judge in that case was prepared to admit the evidence at trial, establishing legal precedent for rootless hair DNA before Heuermann's case resolved. Moore told Entin she has personally helped solve 6 cases using only rootless hair as the physical evidence. 6 cases where every other forensic avenue had failed. 6 cases where a hair shaft, something that would have been sealed in an evidence bag and forgotten a decade ago, produced a name. Now go back to Act 1. That hair, the smallest, most easily overlooked piece of biological material in the entire crime scene, bypasses every problem that has paralyzed this investigation. It does not mix. It does not require deconvolution. It does not depend on CODIS. If it belongs to the kidnapper, and if Astrea can extract a viable SNP profile, that profile enters genealogy databases. A family tree is built. Branches are narrowed. An individual is identified. Moore was careful. She called it a Hail Mary. She acknowledged the hair could belong to Nancy. It could belong to a family member, a house cleaner, a visitor with legitimate access. She noted that hair color and length would serve as the first visual filter. If it matches Nancy's appearance, the FBI may not invest in the costly extraction. She also noted that dyed hair can interfere with the process, and that some individuals carry more DNA in their hair shafts than others. But her assessment was clear. This is the most promising forensic development in weeks. 5 years ago, this hair would have been sealed in an evidence bag and forgotten. Today, it may be the only thing standing between 75 days of silence and a name. Here is where this case stands right now. Nancy Guthrie has not been found. She has not been seen. No confirmed proof of life has been provided at any point since February 1st, 2026. No suspect has been named. No arrest has been made. No person of interest has been publicly identified. The combined reward for information leading to Nancy's recovery, or the arrest of those responsible now, exceeds $1.2 million. The FBI tip line remains active. The task force, 20 to 24 personnel split between the Pima County Sheriff's Department and the FBI, continues working the case from the Bureau's Tucson office. Savannah Guthrie has returned to the Today Show, NBC producers have implemented protocols to sequester her from set if breaking news on the case arrives during a live broadcast. Every morning, she sits behind that desk knowing there is a plan in place for the moment she finds out whether her mother is alive or dead. In the Catalina foothills, yellow ribbons still hang from trees and fence posts along the road outside Nancy's home. Notes from neighbors and strangers line the memorial that has grown at the property's edge. A sign directed at the kidnappers reads, "Do the right thing." The rootless hair analysis, if it proceeds through Astrea Forensics, will take months. Moore acknowledged that. Multiple extraction attempts may be necessary. The first try does not always yield a viable profile. Sometimes the second does not either. But Moore also said the case would likely be pushed to the top of the priority list given its national profile. The question is not whether the technology works. It does. 6 cases solved. Gilgo Beach. Legal precedent established. Dr. Ed Green proved the field wrong, and the FBI adopted his work. The question is whose head that hair came from. If it belongs to Nancy, the analysis ends. If it belongs to a known visitor, the analysis ends. If it belongs to an unknown individual with no legitimate reason to have been inside that house, then 75 days of forensic frustration may be about to collapse into a single name. If you have any information about the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, contact the FBI Phoenix tip line. The number is on your screen. The reward exceeds $1.2 million. 75 days is a long time to wait. One hair may be enough to end the waiting. For 75 days, the science has been chasing this case. Now, for the first time, the science may have caught up. The question is not whether the technology can identify a person from a rootless hair. It can. The question is whose head that hair came from, and whether the answer has been sitting in an evidence bag since February.